Hey, Matt. Yeah, listen, I'm really not sure about this month of reviews. I mean, am I even the person who should be reviewing these things?
What's wrong with chess season? You know, we're just shining a light on great two-player games, doing our bit for social distancing and encouraging people to...
What? Hang on. Chess season? I did all those push-ups for nothing!
Why were you doing push-ups?
Because... Forget it. Listen, you don't need a bin bag full of bras, do you?
What size?
Not sure. Hang on. Let me get my reference now.
If you have played Catan or Ticket to Ride or Wingspan, you lucky dog, have experienced what the board game scene calls a Eurogame, a genre board game designed to test your skills in management and planning so that players don't have to fight directly. Correctly identifying that when people break out a board game, it's because they want to sit down with their loved ones, and not because they want some cage match of a thing where winning means beating mum to death. Eurogames took off because they're great fun, but over the years, as players have gotten more experienced and the market's gotten more crowded, they've become bigger, flashier, more taxing, peaking in the newest games of Portuguese designer Vital Lacerda, which play like the human equivalent of those experiments where a raven has to figure out the 16-step process that gets it a biscuit. Except dumber, because I've played 4 of that man's games and I have received 0 biscuits. So... today, we are reviewing a little 2-player game that reminds us that Eurogames don't have to be complicated, they don't have to take long, they don't even have to be expensive. Let's talk Targi. And, in a bit, the expansion, Targi, the expansion. In the game of Targi, you and your friend are going to represent tribes of Tuareg people competing to live your best life in Saharan Africa, trading in salt and pepper, dates and silver. If you've heard of the Tuareg, it might be because of the kick-ass band Tinari Wen or the questionably named Volkswagen Tuareg. You might also know them for their supposition-smashing practice of Islam where women don't wear the veil, but men might. Or you might have heard of them because they're known as the blue people, because the indigo dyes they use will sometimes stain their skin. What a wicked novel setting for a board game! Although don't get too excited, this is still a Euro game and you might struggle to find a real-life Tuareg who cares this much about victory points. So, first I'm going to teach you how we play this game and then I'm going to teach you how we win. To set the game up, each player receives a little bindle of resources and 3 wooden tribespeople of their colour. And between the 2 players, you lay out these border cards and then randomly deal out some tribe cards and some goods cards from these decks into the middle. Then, within each round, all players are going to do is take turns dropping one of their little people on any card around the edge of the map. And what you're doing as you choose which card to take is you're getting the reward printed on that card while denying it to your opponent. So on my turn 1, I might put my guy on some salt to get some salt and say, don't get salty. And my opponent might go, okay, I'm going to the silversmith. And I might say, is that because you're a sterling silver idiot? Because I'm just cool like that. Not since Oscar the Grouch has someone talked about trash talk. Not since Oscar the Grouch has someone talk trash. But check this out. As players are taking turns to prioritize the prizes around the edge of the map, you are secretly, simultaneously claiming those cards in the middle. If you imagine a line drawn outwards from each of the tribespeople you've put on the edge, you're also going to get the rewards where those lines cross. And while the cards around the edge of the Sahara are fixed for the whole game, when anyone takes a card in the middle, it is gone forever and replaced by a card of the opposite type. This is a puzzle that has seen everyone I've played it with narrow their eyes in quiet calculation. Because what is happening here? What a good play looks like is you snatching a reward that you want off the edge of the map. Oh, this is a disaster. While denying it to your opponent, while setting yourself up to take a good row or column that your opponent also wants. A good example of which would be... well, you get the idea. What players are trying to achieve with all of this passive aggression is to gather more resources faster than their opponent, or, alternatively, spending those resources more efficiently on tribe cards. And tribe cards are how you win the game. When you land your marker on a tribe card, you have the opportunity to buy it for the price printed in the top right. It gets you the victory points printed in the bottom right. You get the rule-breaking power printed in the middle. But also, when you get a tribe card, you're immediately going to place it in one of 3 rows. Each row can have 4 cards maximum. And when one player has a full 4, 12 tribe cards, the game is over. And then players both receive 4 victory points for every row they've got showing 4 of the same picture, and 2 victory points for every row they've got showing 4 different pictures. There are a few extra things to consider, places to visit and ways to score points. There's the robber who walks around doing actually very little. So basically you've got it. Basically that's the game. And as you can tell, it is neither dazzling nor surprising. This desert you are visiting is not full of jewels and genies. This desert is just a desert, by which I mean Targi is very dry. It is striking in its simplicity. It is solid as a rock, and yet it is constantly shifting and changing underneath your very feet. Even though players in Targi are blocking one another from turn 1 to the end of the game, bam, bam, it doesn't feel like the players are preventing one another from having fun, as is the case when people take what I want in other worker placement games. Listen, I'm already doing a board game review on the internet, so I don't think I can max out my dweebiness anymore. So because of that, I will compare this game to some of the sparring drills I used to do when I very briefly studied Wing Chun Kung Fu. Opponents in Targi block one another with such regularity and expertise, it doesn't feel like you're taking momentum from one another, but flowing back and forth between turns. Block, 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 reset. Block, 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 reset. It's so aggressive in its denial that on those few turns where you might start the round and just see one thing you really, really want and just go for it. Bam, I'm taking it, it's mine. That it almost disrupts the flow of the game. Your opponent is going to say, well, really? You're just going to take that? You're going to let me have that? And all of this fun, playful blocking and annoying one another, by the way, is possible because of Targi's simplicity. Because your resources, you can only hold 10 and they have these big chunky icons, I can see from a distance of 2.5 feet exactly what my opponent is doing, what they're collecting and what they don't have. For example, I can see that player's got no dates. I am going to steal all the dates from them like a divorcee with low self-esteem. Also, despite this simplicity, Targi has the peculiar trait of feeling very different from round to round. The game really flows very, very nicely. On one round, you might have no resources and you'll scramble to collect them. The very next round, you and your opponent might be body checking one another out of the way for opportunities to spend those resources. The turn after that, you'll realize you don't have a game plan anymore. What are you doing? You'll have to think. The turn after that, you won't have to think at all. Decisions will come easy to you. They will be obvious and it will be nice. But actually, what I like most about Targi's flow is something very unusual for Eurogames, which is just having turns where you feel like you absolutely aced it. Listen, when you line up your tribespeople just right and your opponent misses what you're trying to do and you manage to land, bam, bam, both of your tokens on the exact cards you want, feels like threading a needle. Assuming you're able to get excited about the thought of collecting a little extra salt than you would have otherwise, you're going to be having the time of your life. And then equally, you will have rounds in Targi where your plans pancake into the plate glass window of your own short-sightedness. And actually, that sensation of feeling like I was clever this round, or oh, I really screwed this round up, is quite rare in Eurogames. They're a genre, speaking generally, that don't want you to feel that there's a correct way to play that you are or aren't ascribing to. Targi, because it resets completely every 4 minutes, really lets players put themselves into corners and holes. Basically, the sensation that you can do well or badly in discrete moments in Targi gives the game real light and shade. It gives it oomph. Although, if you really want some extra oomph delivered fresh from your local oomph monger, we've got to talk about the expansion for Targi, cleverly titled Targi the Expansion. I'm only bitter because this would have been the perfect expansion to call Ladies of Targi, like how the Troy's expansion was called Ladies of Troy. I just think ladies is a funny word. Anyway, this expansion is good, which it would have to be considering it's the same price as the base game again. But I think it justifies that price because this box is transformative. The expansion adds water as a resource, which is basically an extra thing for you to not have enough of. It replaces good border cards with worse ones and bad ones with better ones, so deciding where to send your tribespeople each round is now way harder. It adds a shifting lineup of intriguing, unique sand dune locations that you can choose to send your tribespeople trekking into, drastically increasing your choice of where to send your little people each turn, but always with the edge that you're giving your opponent control of the main board. Even the tribe cards are replaced with more complicated ones, and the robber token who periodically steals from both players has gotten some refined tastes. He now wants specific things every 3 turns, so on top of everything else, players now need to prepare to be burgled. This desert just got a lot bigger and a lot hotter. We've got more kinds of resources and less ways to get them. We've got more options and more risks. The first time I sat down to play this expansion, I had to do like the mental equivalent of dropping my bicycle into a lower gear. I sat down thinking, Targi, it's easy. And I went, I had to sit my buttocks nicer in my chair and I had to get serious. And you know what? This expansion reminds me of something. It reminds me of that first expansion for Istanbul, Coffee and Bakshish. Both that expansion and this expansion for Targi take a base game that's beautifully simple and then with no shortage of creativity and expertise, lift up the entire experience into a whole new weight class of board game. In the words of that one judge from Bake Off, The Professionals, love it, love it, love it. This tickles the left and right side of my brains all at the same time. The right side is pleased with the canny engineering that this expansion does to build upwards and outwards from the original game without creating any additional friction, which is no mean feat. And the left side of my brain likes that this is basically a brand new game that I'm playing. That's what it feels like to me, and yet I still have the warm sensation of fuzzy familiarity because the base game was my friend. And now it's the same, but it's not. It's the same, it's like a kid that's grown up, except unlike a kid, you can pack the expansion away and you can de-grow up that kid and make it small again, which, take it from me, you do not want to try and do with a real life kid. You're not going to get the results you want, and the parents are going to be real dicks about it. But I will just add that despite all my hyperbaton, I would never encourage you to buy Targi the expansion until you had first bought and tried Targi and made sure that you loved it. And candidly, I don't know if you'll love Targi. Because while I think it is this really neat, solid resource wrestling match, that was meant to be me throwing someone over my shoulder, I have to point out that it has one big flaw, and of all things, it's the same flaw that chess has, which is that neither Targi nor chess are intrinsically exciting. They are both quite dry. And the thrill in both, where both games shine, is in letting 2 evenly matched players bend over backwards trying to pen one another in. And when you are evenly matched like that, your opponent's turns are as exciting as your turns. But that means both games only work for as long as both players are mostly evenly matched. And if you're not, there's precious little joy in being shut down and denied and outmaneuvered. There's not much else here to hinge your imagination on, unless you're really into sand and salt. So let's close this review out with some alternative recommendations. If you want a resource management Eurogame that's good for 2 players, that's a little less obvious when players are losing, I'd absolutely recommend this big old box of Concordia. Is it going to stand on its own? 2, 3? Nope, that's a bad idea. If you want a 2-player management game that's with a bit more colour, a bit more storytelling, I'd recommend the classic of Istanbul. But if you really wanted a Euro game that's just for 2 players, that wants to make the most of you and just one other opponent, we have a written review of a big Uwe Rosenberg classic called Fields of Arle that you will find the link to in the description of this video. It is as complicated and heavy as Targi is magnificently simple, but if rules overhead is no obstacle to you, by all means look into Fields of Arle. Arle. Don't know how to pronounce that. Thanks for tuning, everybody. I'll be back in just a couple of weeks with a review of the most chess-like board game of all time. I'll let you have a guess at what that might be in the comments of this video. And if you missed the start of Chess Month, do check out Matt's review of the fabulous Ice Team. And
if a month of 2-player games is still one more player than you are able to rustle up, do not miss Tom's review of 1000-Year-Old Vampire, a 1-player RPG that I've been playing, I've been having a ton of fun with, and actually you can hear my thoughts as well as Tom's on the Shut Up and Sit Down podcast. So do make sure you're listening to that. I'm slightly out of breath because I did this take so many times and it started with jumping. Bye everybody.